real, and I can't see if other people tell me different. I can't see it. So I don't believe it, and I tend to think that people are lying or saying things to be so that they're nice, or saying things that they want me to hear. So I don't trust what other people say. So I can't see it any different. I think what I'm saying is truth. I'm not saying, oh, look, I look awful or whatever, but don't really mean it and just fishing for compliments or, something like that. I genuinely feel that dislikes are not the right word, that really hatred for myself, for my body, for who I am as a person. I think all aspects of it, and that's been my normal for as long as I can remember. I can't remember feeling another way about myself. I've always thought of myself as horrible, both inside, outside, and also the physical body I've always hated and had a dislike to.
What can happen is, when you're a child, when children are born, they often blame themselves. Say if parents are going to get divorced, the child will say, "Is it my fault?" And you think, what's happened to the child? Then, we speak about plasticity in the brain, and how you'll be able to shape your own brain, but ultimately, when you're a child, your brain gets shaped. So when I said, when we come onto this planet, we don't get asked who we are, we get told the wrong information. Or we experience something and then we interpret that as who we are, and it's got nothing to do with us. If somebody else is doing something to you, it's them, it's their stuff. It's not yours, but what we do is we tend to pick it up in part of our learning. We can easily be influenced. The brain can, because it has plasticity, it can easily be brainwashed and influenced, and then it orchestrates the brain network connections. And there's a connection in the brain, pleasure pain. So you have a pain mechanism where you go through certain pains and you feel that pain, and then we have a pleasure one where we feel pleasure. And so what can happen is, or one of the theories is that they can both get, in the brain, they can be wired almost together. So what happens then, and it's easier to explain it in where people are, in sadomasochism or sex videos. And quite often on sex videos, it's people that have been trafficked and sexually abused. And when they're being abused as children, the brain can be rewired with the pleasure pain, because the child has to survive and try and survive its environment. So the brain shapes, for you to survive your environment. So it impacts you then as an adult. So whatever happens to you as a child, your brain has been brainwashed into that. So for you, the pleasure pain connections are when something awful happened to you when you were a child. And that doesn't mean that you enjoyed it in any way, shape, or form. But the connections to that is that we can connect that pain and almost tolerate it to some degree, because sometimes people drift off, and as I've said before, they might disassociate to somewhere else, to somewhere pleasurable, while something very horrible is going on. And I'm not saying that you don't feel it, but ultimately you can, the brain can do that. So you've got the pleasure, pain, I can't say, connections going on there, and then it can be rewired in that way. So as you get older, then what people do is, with those connections, is they connect pleasure with pain. And in sadomasochism, people connect pleasure with a painful experience. And it's almost like when they feel the pain, they feel the pleasure at the same time. And that's what happens. And so there was a study done with monkeys where the brain's, it's an amazing machine, absolutely amazing. It's like an organism. It is an organism in itself. And it will do anything to compensate. So like your body will, it will do anything to compensate. If something's out of whack, something else will go in. Because your body loves you, like I say, so much that it wants to keep you alive. So there was an experiment done with monkeys where I don't like animal experiments. This was, I think it was in the 30s, and they, remove parts of the monkey's brain. But in this experiment, what they did was they tied the monkey's two fingers together, and so it went along having to move the two fingers together, and then eventually realizing, I found out about plasticity, is that when one finger moved, even when it was released, the other finger moved. Or like when there's an elephant and it's tied up as a slave animal in it, and then goes to the zoo. And when it becomes fully grown, it could just snap the rope, but it doesn't, because it still believes, because of the plasticity being shaped, so it still believes. And does that make sense? So in that's why, when people often think, well, why aren't I well? It's because of, number one, your belief system. You really believe in this, but it's because the two networks are attached. And so you say, well, it's just my norm. It's what I believe, but it wasn't your norm. It's what plasticity was bent and shaped into that. And so you then, in the self-loathing, almost take pleasure in it, because quite often how the walks and the pain that goes on in your body, it's like a feel of a sense of achievement when you've done that. So although I'm not saying pleasure in the pleasurable sense, you still take some pleasurable notoriety for what you're doing. And so it's that in itself. It's not the pain part. The pain part, you want to leave that, but it's because it's attached to something else. And when something's attached to pleasure, it's like somebody smoking, knowing that, well, it feels good. I've attached this to feeling good, because when you put something to your mouth, it's called the oral stage of sucking. So people that drink a lot of things like that are frozen in the oral stage, and it's that pleasurable sucking the pacifier or sucking the foam, and so that pleasure, but ultimately it causes a cough or that you smell or things like that. So it's that. And what do you think of that happening to you?
I can see the parallels of what you're saying, that I don't feel as if I'm getting a pleasure out of when I push my body, but I get the sense of achievement, like with my exercise or with my walking. It's like, if I don't feel a pain, or I don't feel that I've done enough, I'm not satisfied. I need to keep going, and till I feel that uncomfortable and pain, and then keep going a bit more. And it's like, I've got to reach that point, and then I know that I've done enough. It's okay to stop.
So what does satisfaction feel like?
That I've achieved something, that I can tick that box, that I've done that today. I've done my certain amount of exercise today. I've pushed myself as far as I can go.
Right.
I can't go anymore. Like,
not
now I
really-
experience fatigue and things like that. It's
Yes.
like, I will keep going until I can't anymore. And then if I can't, I know I've done enough.
So go a bit deeper then, not the intellectualizing it, more on what does it feel like? Not what it's told you. What does it feel like to feel a sense of achievement. There's a feeling with it, and it's
A
not
relief.
and so do you like the feeling of relief?
Yeah.
So that's a pleasure feeling because you like it.
Yeah.
So
but it only lasts seconds because it's the next thing.
and so as you're chasing, like I say, somebody that smokes or with an addiction, as you're chasing for that pleasure, but you go through the pain to chase that pleasure. So can you see the connection then? So it's a constant. Instead of just having a feeling of relief and not doing it, it's going through a motion of seeing how that's connected.
And thinking, like, each time that I've got to push it even more, and it's because of the impact that doing this for years has had on my body. It's really difficult now, like when I'm doing my routines or my exercise, I can't run as fast because I just haven't got the energy. It's not that I ache or I've hurt a muscle or this and other. It's just that I just physically cannot do it anymore. And it's like, that is so upsetting for me that I can't get to that point. I know, like with my running and stuff, like I'm so slower than what I used to be, and it takes a while for me to come after. And it's like my mum's like, well, at least you can run and go out and enjoy it, and that. It's like, you're not getting it. I run because I need to feel the pain in my legs.
Yeah.
That's when I know I've done a good run.
Because your mind
when I've got that pain and I can't do any more.
So and it's that level as well as you said that you were diagnosed with ME, but you weren't helped because they felt that you wouldn't, comply because of your disorder. And then it's the people don't often see your illness because your norm is to push yourself to the limit and push yourself until it hurts and literally run your body into the ground. And so all the other things that you feel are a kind of throwback, really, in terms of it doesn't matter that I feel these other things. So if you were to describe them to people and think, how can you have ME when you do that? Because they would just look at, well, this is the norm, but instead of seeing somebody as an individual and saying, it is the norm for you. And so for that, quite often not being believed about how ill you are because, well, she does this and she does this and normal people don't, because we have a thing, don't we, of somebody will tell a story about what a sick person does, and then everybody that's sick has to do this same thing. Instead of being individualized, we're all put. That's why there's numbers in if you reach this threshold, or you're just under the borderline, or you're just over the borderline, or you just, and it's like, who's borderline and who made up that borderline for every human being in this city? But somebody made a borderline up and dehumanized people even more because we've become figures but not facts. And we can never become facts because everything changes all the time. And so does the stories and the borderlines and the the treatments and things like that.
Yeah, like 20 odd years of exercise addiction and OCD and eating disorders, and a lot, not all of them, my OCDs are activity based, as like really impacted on me physically. Like now I'll still go to the gym and I'll still force myself to run no matter how I'm feeling physically. And like, I can't lift what I used to, but all people say is, well, there's not wrong with you if you can do that. And it's like, but one, I'm not doing what I used to be able to do, and two, you do not know the psychological fallout if I didn't do those things. So I do those things regardless of how I'm feeling. When I've been ill with shingles, I've done spin classes and runs and stuff like that because they're part of my routines that I've got to do and this, that and other. I can sacrifice my physical health to meet the needs of what the voices in my head are saying, doing. And I don't see that I'm damaging my body. I don't see that I'm punishing it or I'm not being good to it. It's just that drive to do those things.
And the drive is that realization of, the plasticity and the shaping of the brain and how people think, that you can't tell somebody that they're not ill if just because they're doing things that everybody says, well, when you're sick, you do this, and when you're well, you do this. Well, how would you know? It's like if somebody, there are people who they can be athletics, yeah, and the look after the body and everything else, but they might have very bad depression where, the ego will get you to kill yourself. So, and they commit suicide, and it's like, well, do you think somebody would then say, well, you can't do that because you looked healthy? They wouldn't say that, and yet it doesn't make sense, does it, to tell somebody how healthy they are because of what they're doing with the body, but the mind isn't healthy. So when you say, well, you can't do that because, you must be well to do that, it's like, no, it's looking at as well and saying, are you will to do that? Because we can turn things into, very healthy things, and we can equally turn them into unhealthy things as well. And so it's looking at you as an individual and in your mind, and saying, for you, and probably many others, say you can easily be brainwashed. That's why I've said before, we're in a culture, we call it, and there are many of them. There's many cultures, and then we go by the cult's tradition, or because we're being controlled. And if we don't comply what the cult leaders decide, then there's a law, and the law will arrest you if you don't do what we tell you to do. Ultimately, because we're human beings, we're almost, having to comply, and then we say, oh, this is normal. It's normal to do the many things that aren't or abusive in the world. And one of them, like I said, you can get a badge for murdering somebody, or you can go to prison. So it's so fickle. And equally coercive control, where we're all coercively controlled.
And I think, like with my exercise, I could say I've got an exercise addiction, and that's a negative thing. But I could say, well, I'm training for this, I'm training for that. It's what slant you put on it. Like I see, I've come across a lot of people with being in that environment and numerous gyms for nearly 30 years. I can see when people have an issue and stuff like that. But the amount of, I'm training for this, or I'm training for that, or I'm doing it because of this, or I'm doing it for my mental health. And it's like, but you're willing to sacrifice your physical health for what you're saying the benefits of your mental health are. And I'm sacrificing my physical health for mental illness, not mental well-being.
Yes.
And an exercise or over-exercise or that kind of thing is often seen as a joke, or I wish I had an exercise addiction problem. I wish or seen as, you're blooming committed here, aren't you? You're always, and this, that, it's always seen as a bit of a joke, or minimised, or trivialised,
or an achievement as well. In that, not where we look on the surface level of what we're thinking, rather than looking at the person and what they, what might be going on.
And I think that it's just made me think of something, but on a different tangent, but how things are seen as or accepted as the norm, and it's a good thing. And so I went through a period of time where for a number of years I was obsessed with spin classes, and I did a certain number each day. I was doing like 30 hours a week spin and things like that. Classes after classes after classes. Didn't break out in a sweat, and I could just keep going and going. But I'd always sit in a certain place, and so it were like the gym would be like, or people who use the gym, it's like, saved you your place, I put some towel on so you've got it, or so and so was sat in your place today. I told them that's you're making fun of it and that kind of thing.
But also colluding with it as well, and saying, you know, it's that checking in, James, isn't it? That
Yeah.
you know, it, where is there a boundary or something
And
to
how
say?
lovely it was decorated for my birthday with balloons and things.
Yeah.
And it's like it was accepted as a good thing or things to look up to. You know, somebody asked me at the gym about, oh, how much do you do and this, that, and other. And it was like, the reality is the sleepless nights of been booking on that class to make sure I got a place on that class. The anxiety through the day, knowing am I going to finish work because I've got to get to that class and I've got to save my bike and I've got to be in it because it gets booked up. So, and the reality of it is absolutely horrendous.
Yes.
And like, and when people did make a joke about my bike and stuff like that, or put blue towel in it, we tied it with a bow and this, that, and other. It was like, I wonder if nobody realised that I needed that certain bike, not because I used it all the time or I went or it was my bike. It was near, Spin is in the darkened room. It was near the door. There's a light shining through through the little slit in the door. I felt that safer.
Yeah.
There was nobody behind, because I was on the end. There was nobody behind me. There was no, because I can't cope with anybody behind me. There was nobody in front of me. There was nobody at the side of me. There was just one person at the side of. So that was one person I had to deal with rather than 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
and all those. I don't like the sound of breathing, so I was further away from everybody else. I was under the speaker. Don't like the sound of breathing. Under the speaker, Spin, loud music. You couldn't hear anything else. It were all those things that I were dealing with internally that nobody saw, and it was seen as like you say, something to aspire to, something to make fun of, something, that kind of thing. It was like, and I guess that can go in all environments. Again, it's just made me think of something else. At work, I used to work 24/7, fitting in my spin classes and this ball, doing work and not sleeping, this and another. I was seen as somebody to look up to. If Debbie can do it, why can't anybody else? If Debbie can get all the reports done like 2 weeks before the deadline, and this, why can't everybody else?
I guess as well because you fit into the narrative of you know, being in a cult that doesn't do human beings, it does human doings. And that's why you go to school, you start off there to being, you know, you have to get this for a job. So you don't have a childhood, really. You're just going to be brainwashed.
I was very good at being a human doing. I think
Exactly.
that I can't class myself as a failure,
but everybody,
but I'm not. I'm good at it.
Because you're a massive, as far as society would go, you're a massive success for working for a machine that you're just going to slave away from, and then somebody's going to come along and take it intact. And that's what, you know, you're a massive success for that. And you just fall off the end. You're born, you can be with your parents for a bit, and then you're in this machine. You're just going to go into this learning machine. You're going to be in there. The biggest things that you learn, which I've said before, must should have to got to. You're not going to learn much about being a human being. In fact, nothing at all. But you're just going to learn these things, and the majority of them you're not going to ever use. You know, other than maths and English, and that's saying it shouldn't take 16 to 18 years to learn maths and English, but unfortunately then from that machine you're just going to go into and ultimately that's
I might self-love and hate myself and think that I'm useless and I'm not good at all and stuff like that, but it's not an achievement, but I do well at hurting myself. I do well at starving myself. I achieved those things.
You've achieved your intention. We you know, our intention is to do whatever we're doing, and we achieve it. We don't start off like that.
No, I think my attention has been
you're
to destroy myself.
It has, but not purposefully. You're reacting to an abnormal situation, and because you're reacting to an abnormal situation, it tells you how abnormal your environment is, which is society. So you're reacting to, you know, what you've been told, because society is reacting to it as well. So it's story after story after story of being told things and having the plasticity in our brain shaped. So we make connections, and these connections drive us in one way or another, but not in our way.
No.
It's driven in an unhealthy way. And so, you know, when people learn things, it doesn't mean that you have a, you know, a certain degree of belief. And if your beliefs are fixed into something, and it's gently changing that plasticity in your brain, it's not just a switch like this. It takes time to, and some things will change quickly, and some things will change over time. And as you've experienced, yours is changing over time. So it's that kind of understanding what's going on and why those connections were made like that in the first place.
And I can see that, like, how, like, being sexually abused and all that kind of stuff, but how, so you might think, well, that's over now, that only lasted so many years when you were little and stuff like that, and then you were safe and stuff like that. But it's because I was little, and that is that time, and it's like that influenced how I saw the world and everybody
For
else
sure,
in
that
it.
definitely did
And
that.
also because I changed as a response, the interaction that I got back from the world and those in it,
yes,
shaped me, so it carries on even when they, like, the actual physical side of that abuse has finished. That legacy it has,
yes,
and you can see it, and it's like, I think I've never sort of like realized it before, but I think from that age, I did have that self-destruct phase, but in a subtle way, because I was told that if you commit suicide, you'll get punished, it's selfish, and I didn't want to be a bad person, so I found ways to destroy myself.
And that's why is that when because the brain's a recording machine, that when you refer back to these, you say them exactly the same way, because you can hear the recording playing out, that's fixed, almost the, you know, being able to let it go. And so when it's that realization, as you said, you know, we spoke before about sexual abuse doesn't cut it, but if you were to say that a 5-year-old child got raped by a man for how many years, then that's totally different. Do you see what I mean? But when it's like you said, that, you know, we had the conversation on previous videos about how sexual abuse doesn't cut it, because you know, what sentence is a sexual abuse? It depends on the person and what they think about that. Do you see what I mean? But it's like if you just said somebody got raped, it sounds different. But if you say the child got raped for 5 years, it's rape.
It's called like underage sex, as if it's something like.
But it's not. You're not having sex underage. The person is raping you. So how can you call it underage sex when it's the person? It's an adult raping a child. So although the child, and if an adult, you wouldn't say that for an adult raping an adult, would you? You wouldn't. You'd call it rape.
Yeah, they don't sound used to that somebody was sexually abused in a park or whatever.
Yeah,
do they?
Yeah. Do you see what I mean? So why would you? Why are this language of underage sex as if you consented to it? You didn't consent to it. He was raped as a 5-year-old child, and it went on for years. And each time it was rape. It wasn't underage sex. It was rape. It was an adult having sex. The child had nothing to do with the sexual encounter whatsoever. You just used a piece of meat for that. So I don't understand that. You know, that the wording of it, I'm not sure. Other people, you know, might understand and make sense of it, but I can't understand that connotation of underage. So it's two people that we say that are underage, and they're both equally agreeing to it. Then, but other than that, that to me,
it don't make it sound as bad, does it?
No,
I guess
something totally different.
Yeah, it makes something different, like when people use acronyms and stuff like that. And and stuff.
Yeah.
But
So
I know I've thought of something just different completely, going back to what you said like ages ago. You know, like when I said like with my mental health issues, which OCD and
you know how we spoke about
addiction. Oh yeah, it's not mine. It's I'm experiencing
you're
it.
doing them.
Yeah, I'm doing them. They're not
these.
mine. I'm experiencing in them. But like when I went to like chronic fatigue and ME clinic, quite rightly, they accepted the severity of that you can't, that it's difficult to change. You can't just say, oh right, stop doing that. You know, it's like having an eating disorder. Oh, stop doing that and eat normally now. So in a way, it's good that they acknowledged the complexities and the difficulties. But then to say that means that we're not even going to try. That's not fair, really, is it? It's like how I hear like people talk about borderline personality. So you can't cure it, so we won't bother try working with you. You can. People are capable of change. Don't just. Well, it's the stereotypes, the labels.
It is, because you can't say to a human being the whole body is made equipped to heal itself. If you cut your hand, it will heal. So the body's equipped to heal itself. Sometimes we might need help with broken bones and things like that. But ultimately, it's the body that's healing it. Once you put it back in place, nothing else is, other than keeping it still. So, you can't, you might say, well, I don't know how to heal you. But it doesn't mean there isn't somebody, unless you went round, as they say, there's 8 billion people on the planet. I don't know, I haven't counted them personally, but that's where it said. So have you gone round and asked all 8 billion people on the planet if they could? Because maybe there might be one who says, yes, it can be cured. But my belief is that if you can get sick, you can get, you can get well. It might take time, it might take a long time, but ultimately it depends on the individual.
Yeah, and I don't think we see that. We just see a label or a diagnosis, and not actually that this is a person who's struggling. It's not, oh, we won't be able to do them in 3 sessions or 6 sessions, so we won't bother at all.
Yeah. It's fitting into a box. There's always a box out there, and you're going to fit into somebody else's box, and that's it's like some people, if they leave therapy and they come back, they might feel a kind of way, or they might say, oh well, I feel I've let you down. And it's like, you can never let me down, it's about you. And there's a stereotype, is you should be done within this and you should be done within that. And it's like, no, you're a human being, and when you feel right, you're right, and when you don't, you don't. So if somebody, you can time things, because we've watched, a broken leg, how long does it take? It takes about 6 to 8 weeks. So okay, let's time it and say, you can't do that with the whole of the body and the emotions and the belief system and things like that. I don't think you can anyway. I just think that people are individuals, and it's okay for them to say, I still need help, because when they're getting hurt, you'll ask them how long they got hurt for, and you say, oh, won't be fed up with it by now. Do you see what I mean? But when people get abused and there's an abuser, they'll abuse their whole life. You don't say to them, well, you finished that by now. But when you're getting well, it's always like, you finished by now. So it's like, why is that?
Yeah.
It's a question.
Which might lead us on to another video on trauma-informed care.
Okay. Are you okay to end there? Are you feeling okay about the talk today? I know you had a thing about the way you speak and things like that. Yeah.
I'm still hate that.
Yeah, but we're Yorkshire. We're going to speak as we do.
And I don't know how to speak any other way.
Well, that's what we were taught, to speak this way, so we can change it if you want, but other than that, do you want to change it?
No, not at the minute.
Okay.
I've got enough on.
Are you okay to end there?
Yeah.